What's up, everyone? Today we're going to be taking a look at a popular Vocaloid song that I believe is one of the better examples of how you can use not just the lyrics and visuals to tell a story, but the song itself. And that song is Kyu Kurarin by Iyowa. This is the first in a series of videos where I analyze Vocaloid songs that I've come across in my Vocaloid journey that, in one way or another, surprised me and left me in awe. These are songs that I fell in love with for a multitude of reasons, and these videos are a means to output that love and share my perspective on why I believe these songs are just so freaking good. Huge shout out to Iyowa, the mastermind behind this song. With that out of the way, let's not waste time, let's get right into it. On August 29, 2021, the song Kyu Kurarin made its debut, boasting over 10.83 million views on Nico Nico and 96 million views on YouTube at the time of this recording. Sung by the voice band Kafu, it was originally released as a single before making its way onto the album Watashi no Heritage, listed as track number 9. It's a song that clicked with me instantly upon seeing the album cover and preview in Project Sekai's song store. After playing through it just once, it quickly became one of my favorite Vocaloid songs of all time, and I really thought I had just stumbled upon an underrated gem. I thought I was special for having this song in my top 5, and come to find out, this song has the numbers it does. I was very happy about it though. I love seeing my favorite works gassed up by so many, and I will audibly cheer if I happen to discover this song in another rhythm game I just started playing. Now, I felt very strongly about this song, but these feelings were all based on vibes. Like so many other fellow overseas listeners who didn't know the lyrics, I too thought this was a fun, happy-go-lucky song. Maybe we were just following the perspective of a young lovesick girl who just collided with her crush in the hallway after sharply turning a corner with toast in her mouth, where she then helps him pick up all the books and papers he dropped. She's happy and in love, but she's also confused because she's never felt this way towards someone before. Maybe she's just a confused girl who doesn't know how to cope with these feelings, and she's going crazy just thinking about him everywhere. From the moment she wakes up out of bed, her mind's a mess, and she feels dizzy just thinking about it. She's going through a lot of emotions. She feels Kyu Kurarin. Did I get that right? The song is a sweet, innocent, lovey-dovey story, right? No. Not even close? What is it about then? What if I told you that despite the overall jolly nature of Kyu Kurarin's composition, there were signs of an underlying melancholy hidden within its instrumentals the whole time? Let's take a look. Kyu Kurarin opens up with a fast rhythmic knocking from all the instruments and layers. The bass, piano, drums, and xylophone all work together in unison to create identical rhythmic patterns, emphasizing the same beats. This fast-paced staccato rhythm being placed right at the very start gives the song an energetic boost of momentum for the rest of the song to ride off of, almost as if you've been resting for quite some time, sleeping blissfully and untroubled, without a care in the world. When all of a sudden, you've been woken up by the metallic chiming of your alarm clock bells, and you're wide awake enough to start your day, which will be full of twists and turns, ups and downs, mood swings, and more. The music video even starts with 2 whole seconds of silence before being perfectly timed with the alarm clock show on screen, almost as if the music is mimicking the alarm. It all even comes to a slight pause when the hand comes onto the screen and turns off the alarm. Well, most of it comes to a pause. The xylophone line underneath is still ringing in a 32-note rhythm as we're transitioning. And it's this movement that acts as her momentum, and its trickling kickstarts all of the kinetic energy from this beginning riff straight into the intro verse. After all, a day full of known knowns and known unknowns will surely be a lot to handle. You'll need plenty of momentum to tackle this day, enough to make you feel like you can keep going to the finish line. The song is set at a fast tempo, and Kurari-chan seems ready to start her day. The drawings in the MV depict her doing numerous actions, most likely depicting her morning routine on a weekday from the time she wakes up to the time she arrives at school. At least, this is how I interpret these frames. After waking up, she quickly realizes she's almost late for school. She munches on a quick breakfast and slips on her shoes, then adjusts her backpack and hair, waves goodbye to her relatives before rushing out the door, runs all the way to school, drenched in sweat in an effort to arrive on time. She arrives at school and waves to the teacher, letting them know that she's present. And then, exhausted, she finally catches her breath, now that she's where she needs to be. This sequence is then played over and over again until the main verse starts. Now, there is meaning in this repetition, but I'll explain that soon, because going back to the musical side of things, we can hear that the song is riding off the fast-paced momentum from the intro sequence, and the song is at a whopping 220 BPM. We can also hear that the chord progression is even using said momentum. As it travels up the E major scale, the tone gets higher and higher. As we begin to wake up, we move from the 1, the 2, the 3, the 4. Then a surprise appearance of a B-sharp diminished chord, which isn't naturally found on this diatonic scale, but we still have just enough inertia to reach C-sharp, our 6th. Considering the way all the instruments are playing this part, doesn't this established groove feel upbeat and jolly? Like you're just happy to be out of bed and starting your day. Everything's all sunshine and lollipops and you just know it's gonna be a good day today. Except already, something seems off. See, we're getting the intro versus main melody in this ghostly sounding instrument. So combined with the off-key dissonance of the main instrument and the offbeat, almost delayed rhythm of this little music box line in the back, this makes for an introduction that's presented almost messy in how everything's played. Alright, now I'll admit, I was not at all a fan of this aspect at first. I thought the song had such a fun and upbeat vibe, so to have lines like these that quickly developed into something so off-putting really muddied up the vibes on my first listen. I got used to it eventually, like an acquired taste, but my thoughts on it didn't really change. That is, until I learned the context of Kyu Kurarin's story, and now I see it as a genius plot device that adds to the song's narrative immersion. Everything seems to be on cloud 9 on the outside, but there's a growing pain that cannot be covered up, and I think this intro riff makes it clear that from the very beginning, these dark feelings were always present, that there was always something wrong with Kurari-chan. Going back to that chord progression from earlier, we saw that we were traveling all the way up the slope, but this momentum could only get us so far, because the friction of life's stresses has built up resistance, and it's caused us to avalanche all the way down to the 2. Injured from the fall, it even painfully doubles down on the 2 chord by turning it from a second to a flat second. But it being on the 2 chord means it wants to naturally resolve to the 1 chord, and that's just what it does. Again, and again, and again. Pairing this with the looping visuals makes it feel like this chord progression is a callback to the perpetual routine we've established Kurari's life is in. Poor girl. Now, at last, we make it to the main verse. Now that we reach the lyrics, we can get more of an insight on Kurari's character, seeing as these lyrics are from her perspective, and right off the bat, we can confirm something important. She mentions that after silencing her alarm, she's unable to bring herself to get out of bed. She can only bring herself to stare at the alarm clock's ticking hand, eyes half open. And we can also confirm our suspicions from earlier that she is running late from school. Classes in Japan typically start at 8:30 in the morning, with students arriving even earlier to sit down and prepare for classes. However, in Kurari's case, it's well past 8 AM, and she still has yet to muster the strength to leave her bed. Now, let's go back to the music side for a second. If you listen closely, you can hear the sound of a distant ringing by her xylophone. It's a line that's specific to this first verse, you won't hear it played anywhere else. And thematically, its presence is tied to the part where Kurari is still trying to wake up. It's because of this placement that leads me to believe that this distant ringing is her alarm that's still going off. Like all she did before was hit snooze, but now it's going off again, only this time, she's tuned it out in her head, drowning out the ringing with thoughts of wanting to go back to sleep. She can't even enjoy her life's simplest pleasures anymore. Even the beautiful flower pot that she keeps next to her bed, full of soil that's soaked and flowers that are overgrown to the point of tying themselves to each other, she calls stupid. Now that we're at the chorus, we can see that it only gets worse from here. She believes she'll turn into a fossil, though of course she means this metaphorically, and that being the case, she's insinuating that she'll be forever stuck in a state of seemingly healthy on the outside, This happy and healthy activerse will forever be on display for all, encased in a lustrous and radiant gold amber for everyone to call fine. But it's all superficial, as they're unable to view the suffering she's been enduring. The next few lines also support this mindset of keeping up appearances, with her exclaiming that despite the void in her heart gradually growing larger, what else is she to do if others around her were to find out? She views herself as worthless and feeble, but it's scary to think about others knowing she feels this way about herself. And so, the show must go on. If we look at our melody being played, its contours tell a story of trying to use momentum to lift your spirits up, only to fall back down when your anxiety gets the best of you, similar to our chord progression from earlier, and the cycle repeats itself 2 more times before settling at the bottom in a stagnant state of depression, and then quickly switching up your act the second someone comes around to make it seem like you're up and okay. But even though you're all the way up here, that looming state of dread from earlier never disappeared. This cycle also repeats 2 more times before you end up back where you were in the beginning, only this time, you're worse off now than you were before. There's even a line in the first verse talking about how glad she is that her dead face doesn't change, how glad she is that she doesn't have to try harder than she already is. But the void continues to grow, and she isn't quite sure how to describe this feeling. I suppose we can narrow it down to Kyu Kurarin? During the intro verse, the visuals repeated themselves several times over to symbolize the repetitive nature of Kurari's life. But in this chorus, the repetitive is used in a totally different way. While before, the multiple Kuraris on screen depicted her doing several different actions, and it was this action cycle that continuously repeated itself. In the chorus, however, the part that's repeating is her singing the lyrics, which seems like it's meant to convey to us that every day she does this routine is another day where she tells herself everything we hear her say in the chorus. Things like, I'm gonna turn into a fossil, I don't have anything going for me, I want to keep up this act. What will they do if this all gets out? Now, I'm not saying she's literally singing the chorus verbatim to herself every day. Unlike me during my first 2 months of hearing Kyu Kurarin when this song was a constant earworm. More so that she's been repeating the overall ideas said in the chorus to herself constantly, every day. Which certainly solidifies the melancholic nature of the song, I feel. Another thing I want to note about this section is the use of a reverse effect. If you listen closely, you can hear the sound of an instrument that sounds like it's being played in reverse underneath all the other layers. This instrument is actually a xylophone, and if we reverse this bit, we can hear a faint melody. Now I'm not sure if this melody is something Iyowa created specifically for this reverse effect bit we hear in the song, or if it's actually some sort of reference or motif to another song, maybe another one of Iyowa's songs. But I think it'd be really freaking cool if it were the latter. Maybe one of you watching might recognize the melody. But this use of reverse instrumentals hidden beneath the other layers suggests a growing breakage in the song, and is one of many devices used to symbolize the gradual deterioration of Kurari's mind state. As we continue on, we get these shots of Kurari silencing her alarm to start her daily routine, and we see this happening again, and again, and again, until... We've established that the use of repetition in this song represents her monotonous routine that she's had to repeat day after day, and that it hasn't really been getting any better for her. But this is the first instance we start to see her go against the grain. She states that she can no longer find any reason to get out of bed, as she is already aware of what'll come next. Anything would be better than another repeat. As she begins to show resistance, the song follows suit, employing elements that break the groove and vibes of the bubbly instruments. As if to say, this song's structure cannot function without momentum. The signs start to show immediately. There's this really eerie, but satisfying on the ears if I may add, xylophone and chiptune lines that trickle underneath everything, like a bunch of machines in a computer room signaling status changes or alerts. And there's another sign that's more subtle and easy to miss. If you listen closely to the piano line, you'll hear that it's playing the exact same progression we heard the first time around, only this time, not only is it played much slower, but there's a very slight delay on the chords being played that makes it sound intentionally offbeat and ununiform. This is the first of many instances where the song's overall structure begins to crack. During this section of the song, we enter a halftime count. Think of this as going through a tunnel where the tempo is half and not much light shines through. You're free to walk through it slower than usual, and you've never been more alone with your own thoughts. You take a breather, and you begin to reflect on your reason for even getting out of bed. But before you know it, the show must go on, and you're already out of the tunnel. The tempo abruptly continues at the same pace it was at before, only this time, you aren't as strong enough. Kuriri decides to continue her routine as usual despite her much stronger reluctance this time around. The verses instrumentals are mostly the same as it was the first time around, but something's different this time. It's the presence of that ghostly dissonance we got from the main hook in the intro verse. This instrument comes back and creates a constant, unsettling harshness that lasts for the entirety of this section. And as the balance of the song begins to fall apart, the visuals begin to reflect this collapse. Something strange happens the second time we arrive at the chorus. We're greeted with the familiar groove we got from the chorus last time, only this time we've abruptly shifted to the next bar a beat earlier than usual. This change in count is something that I'm sure caught everyone off guard the first time, and is indicative of the song's gradual decay. It's almost as if Kuriri has continued with her joyful and healthy act in front of others, but she interrupts her train of thought, as if to say, who am I kidding? There's just no way you are going to find out. For now I've got to continue, but there's just no way I can keep doing this forever. Kyu Kurarin doesn't even begin to describe the psychological turmoil she's experiencing. It's more like Kyu Kurarin now. This part speaks for itself. The visuals are distorting. Kuriri is unable to get out of bed, and that savage piano solo, which almost sounds as if she's slamming on the piano out of distress. You can tell she's trying to stay on the song's key, but can't even be bothered to keep up that act. We enter a section with the slowest tempo and feeling we've heard thus far. and Kurarin is once again alone with her own thoughts. What we can take away from this section of the song is that Kurarin tries to make an effort to enjoy life's little things, like the flowers that bloom around her or the rainbow in the sky. Things that people around her take no interest in whatsoever, she tries to find relief in their beauty. She can clearly see how beautiful they are and understands what makes them so beautiful, but it no longer stirs any emotion. She remains unmoved. She truly doesn't know what to do anymore. The song itself uses some heavily filtered radio sounding instrument around this part, which pierces through the soft piano playing and overall calmer tone of this bridge. It creates a very strange dichotomy that makes you feel like something isn't right here. The song already had some strange modulation during the more upbeat sections, like in the chorus with the reverse xylophone, but doesn't it feel strange to have these phrasings during this calmer section? It's almost like the song is telling us that Kurarin can't even find peace and reflection anymore. This would also be a good time to point out something interesting with the vocals. In music, a harmony is a group of two or more melodic layers all playing a note at the same time to create a new harmonic voice. These may come in the form of chords or even just a dyad with two voices. Harmonies can make you feel a number of ways depending on what notes the voices are hitting, and how a composer decides what notes are to be hit depends on a multitude of factors. Okay, now there's a lot more to this concept in music theory, but for the sake of this video, you only really need to know what I just said and one other thing. In the main melody of a song, harmonies are typically used when you want to add an emotional emphasis to a section. Sometimes the first half of a section only uses one voice, and then the second half uses two for emphasis. Or maybe a song uses harmonies liberally and then tones it down with one voice for its calming bridge section. But Kyu Kurarin is different. The entire song, from start to end, is in a constant state of a three-voice harmony. There's not one time where it breaks away from harmonizing. Even in the slower, calmer bridge section, it manages to keep its three-voice harmony. I thought this was a pretty interesting detail of the song. Now, does this mean anything for the narrative? Probably not. I'm sure Iyowa was just having fun making Kyu Kurarin and wanted to try out making a song with this concept in mind. But to let you in on my little headcanon with this info, I like to think that because Kurarin is in such a continuous state of depression and loneliness that no one truly understands her, it's to convey to the listener that this entire time, Kurarin's only really ever had herself, her thoughts, and the voices in her head. It's been a struggle that she's had to endure alone this entire time, and these never-ending voices represent different facets of herself that attempt to rationalize getting out of bed, going to school, eating, enjoying the little things, just living in general. Alright, we've come to the finale, and this is where the tragedy starts to set in. This is where we learn that Kurari's flowers that once bloomed so proudly, to the point of being overgrown, are no longer being cared for, and have already withered into what she calls filthy and pitiful. The chorus's repeating visuals are upside down, and now even depict Kurari crying. The anxiety gets the best of her, and the voices in her head tell her that it's all over for her. The percussion is erratic, moving at double the tempo than it was before as she begins to panic. She even begins to imagine a scenario where she actually has someone there for her, a shoulder to lean on and a chest to cry on, while at the same time acknowledging that she's already lost and that this will only ever be a dream. All in this final stretch of the song. The song ends with her saying, "Watashi chuburarin." Unlike Kyu Kurarin, which isn't a word and was only used to describe what she felt, and Kyu Kurarin being a more distorted variation of the nod word Kyu Kurarin to show the song's gradual wear, chuburarin actually has meaning, in that it's a state of limbo, or something that hasn't or isn't finished. With this final line, the official translation tells us that she'll be staying in this state of depression perpetually, which also fits the final visual of the MV, being her turning off her alarm clock and starting her routine, just like we've been watching her do this whole time, since the very beginning of the video, which implies a loop of events. But this line also carries a potential double meaning. Chuburarin also happens to be a word to describe something dangling or suspended in the air. With this being the final line in the song, it implies a very unfortunate outcome for Kurari-chan, the worst case scenario. The story of Kyu Kurarin is one of tragedy. A girl suffers from depression and lives a repetitive life cycle where she forces herself to put on an act and smile around her peers. She acts as if everything is okay, but slowly throughout the course of the song, the cracks begin to show and it gradually becomes more difficult to keep up her performance. She finds that she can no longer bring herself out of bed, that she can no longer enjoy life's little pleasures, that she can no longer take care of what's dear to her, and she grapples with the idea that she'll be stuck like this forever. It's a tragedy. I really felt for Kurari the first time I pieced it all together. Kyu Kurarin is a song of sorrow, and the overall composition does an amazing job at communicating this, though you wouldn't know it if you looked at its energetic and joyous instrumentation at face value, the same way those around Kurari assumed she was energetic and happy every day. Now, this song is in Japanese and was posted primarily to a Japanese audience, so of course they were able to recognize the tragedy in the lyrics immediately. So it's no shocker that all of the shock from the lyrics are coming from those overseas. But the contrast between the jolly vibes of the instruments and melodies versus the dark lyrics isn't the only contrast present. Whether it's the jolly melody of the lyrics versus what's actually being said, or the normal sounding instruments and phrasings versus the more offbeat and eerie sounding instruments. There's a surprise in the song for everyone, and Iyowa did a stellar job at bringing in all of these elements together and telling a story in not just the lyrics, but the animation, and of course, the music. Now, before we bid farewell to Kyu Kurarin for today, there's one last thing I'd like to shout out. It's one of my favorite aspects of the Kyu Kurarin listening experience, and I've never heard it talked about at all. It's that beautiful bass guitar. But to properly show it off, we'll have to switch from the original version to Project Sekai's arrangement. You see, aside from using 5 singers and the song being transposed 2 keys down, going from E major and D flat major to D major and B flat major, there's another huge difference with this version, and that's the bass guitar being much louder than before. I mean, you have to hear this bass line, it's so good. Ah, that's nice. But the weird thing about this bass line is that it is present in the original. I was actually totally convinced that it didn't have it at all, and that Iyowa wrote a new bass line just for the Project Sekai version. It wasn't until after I ran Kyu Kurarin through a program and isolated its elements for fun, including the bass, where I discovered that there was a bass line there, hiding under all the other instruments this entire time. And honestly, I'm glad Iyowa decided to give the bass more of a spotlight in this version. Like I mentioned earlier, Project Sekai's iteration was actually my first impression of Kyu Kurarin, and because of this more prominent bass guitar and the key this version is in, this is my personal favorite between the two. But I will always have a soft spot for this song no matter the version. Kyu Kurarin is just that good. Kyu Kurarin is peak. Thanks for watching.